The heart of the land. So who does Israel really belong to? Well, let's have a look at what the Bible says. In Jeremiah 16, verse 15 says this: "As surely as the Lord lives, who brought the Israelites out of the land of the north and out of all the countries where he had banished them, for I will restore them to a land I gave their forefathers." In the early 90s, when these verses were on the lips of many owing to the vast Russian Aliyah, the return of Jewish people to the land. However, it is worth noting that these verses refer to the Jewish return from all the countries where God had banished them. That this return is ongoing is clearly another example of the Lord's faithfulness in fulfilling his word. The conclusion of verse 15 reminds us of the destination of their return. It is of course the land he gave to their forefathers, the land of Israel. So what does the Bible actually say about the land, and in particular, what are the promises related to the land? Genesis 13 to 15 says this: "The Lord said to Abram, after Lot had parted from him, 'Lift up your eyes from where you are, and look north and south, east and west. All the land that you see I will give to you and your offspring forever.'" So where was he when the promise was made? Genesis 17 and 18 of the same chapter: "Go walk through the length and breadth of the land, for I am giving it to you." So Abram moved his tent and went to live near the great trees of Mamre, Hebron, where he built an altar to the Lord. Logically, then, in view of these verses, we can confidently assume that he was somewhere between Bethel and Hebron, which are both in Israel. Psalm 105, verses 8 to 11 says this: "He remembers his covenant forever, the word he commanded for 1,000 generations, the covenant he made with Abraham, the oath he swore to Isaac. He confirmed it to Jacob as a decree, to Israel as an everlasting covenant. To you I will give the land of Canaan as the portion you will inherit." Clearly, these verses serve to confirm the promises made in relation to the land. Note that in verse 8 the word forever is used and the word everlasting appears in verse 10. It is apparent, therefore, that these promises are not temporary in nature, that in fact they are in effect for at least as long as the planet Earth continues to exist. Ezekiel 36 contains further revelation regarding the Lord's plans for the land. In verse 1, the prophet is commanded to speak to the mountains of Israel. "Son of man, prophesy to the mountains of Israel, and say, 'O mountains of Israel, hear the word of the Lord.'" As we delve deeper into the chapter, we begin to see his purposes for those mountains. Verses 8 to 12, for example, make clear that the Lord intends that multitudes of his people live on those mountains. "But you, O mountains of Israel, will produce branches and fruit for my people Israel, for they will soon come home. I am concerned for you and will look on you with favour. You will be ploughed and sown, and I will multiply the number of people upon you. Even the whole house of Israel, the towns will be inhabited and the ruins rebuilt. I will increase the number of men and animals upon you, and they will be fruitful and become numerous. I will settle people on you as in the past, and will make you prosper more than before. Then you will know that I am the Lord. I will cause people, my people Israel, to walk upon you. They will possess you, and you will be their inheritance. You will never again deprive them of their children." As we dig further into Ezekiel 36, it is important to take note of the consequences of this Jewish return to the land. We encourage you now just to pause this video and read these verses. Clearly, the results are of great significance. In conclusion, they are a restoration of the relationship between the people of Israel and the God of Israel. This return of the Jewish people to the land God chose for them would be the opportunity for them to respond to the new covenant that would redeem them from their sin. The Bible is clear that the battle today over who owns the land is part of the spiritual battle over who is the true and living God. There is no doubt that in the end, all the nations will know that He is the Lord. Join us in praying for Israel. Discover more at www.prayerforI.org.